UFC Fight Night, Dolidze versus Imavov. Full card predictions. The first fight of the night, what we're talking about, is Thomas Peterson versus Jamal Pogues. To start the night, I'm going to go with the underdog. I'm going with Jamal Pogues to start off the card. Listen, the reason this isn't because I think Pogues is a great fighter. You look at the last few fights for Pogues. He lost to McParkin, excuse me. I mean, just got outworked by Mick Parkin on the feet. Parkin showed he's a better striker. Parkin trains with Aspinall, though, and Phil DeFries as well. So he trains with good. And I think, who else does he train with? There's another top heavyweight. Is it not top? Who else is it? I forget the other guy. There's a few guys in that gym that are high level heavyweights, not even just in the UFC, outside the UFC as well. Um, so no, I don't want to say that's a terrible loss. I know Parkin was a 6-0 fighter, similar record to Peterson, but I think Mick Parkin is definitely more skilled than Thomas Peterson. Jamal Pogues beat Josh Parisian. Um, and his other loss came on the regional scene to Alex Polizzi by heel hook. That was in round 4. I don't see Peterson going for heel hooks. That's not his game. He's not a grappler. He's just a. I know he does have submissions, but he's more of like a wrestler, like a top heavy wrestler. Wants to get on top of you, keep control, maybe land some ground and pound. But if you look at Thomas Peterson, he's fought very, very low level fighters. Chandler Cole's not good. I know you look and he doesn't have a terrible record, 10-4, but he's not a good fighter at all. He's just a big kind of fat heavyweight is what he is, and I'm just being honest. That if you look at him, he's not in good shape. You could tell he doesn't even have the athleticism to stop a takedown. Now you could say Pogues is a little bit out of shape, but at least Pogues can stuff some takedowns. At least he has a bit of athleticism in his body. Chandler Cole didn't. Richard Foster sure didn't. Foster is 6-6 now, so him winning that fight in round 1 doesn't really mean much. He's fought very, very low level fighters, man. He's fought bad fighters. I don't know why so many people are confident in this guy. I don't. He lost to Waldo Cortez Acosta. And got finished by Waldo Cortez Acosta in round 3, the only decent fighter he's fought, and Waldo's not even good. Waldo's not even a good fighter, and he finished Thomas Peterson. So, look, I don't know about Jamal Pogues. I don't trust in him enough to say I'm picking him to win, but plus 140. I mean, I don't know. I don't trust in I don't know how anyone can pick. Um, just knowing what you know about Peterson, we know Pogues trains out of a better gym. We at least know he's shown, he can go rounds in the UFC, something that Peterson hasn't done before. Maybe Peterson will show me in this fight that he's pretty good and he can get Pogues down to the ground and submit him. Pogues is a black belt, so I guess that'll, his grappling will be tested by Peterson. I just don't think, I don't, Peterson's never been the distance either. So we don't know how his cardio is going to look. We don't know how he's going to look in the later rounds. Even if you want to say Pogues is going to gas out, Peterson probably will as well. So this is going to be a sloppy fight. If it goes the distance and it's somehow a split, I'd rather be on the underdog than be on the favorite. So give me Jamal Pogues as an underdog to start the night. Next fight we have is Markel Medeiros taking on Landon Quinones. Now, Medeiros and Quinones, this is another one where I'm against the majority. Majority are on Medeiros. I'm not. I'm on Quinones. Reason being is because Landon Quinones has fought the better level of competition. It's another competition thing. I'm not saying, you have to fight amazing levels of competition or I'm not going to pick you to win, but when you're fighting bad fighters, even if you're finishing them, it's hard for me to believe. Like, you got to show me something. If you show me you can be a good, if you show me you can beat good fighters, then I'm like, all right, I can believe in this guy because I know he can beat, good, solid fighters. This guy Medeiros hasn't fought anyone good. He just hasn't. Michael Murphy gave him some trouble on the feet, so he just turned into a wrestler, turned into a grappler in that fight. Beat Justice Lamperez, who is 8-11 now. That doesn't even really count as a win. You can erase that off his record. Anyone that has a negative record, you can just erase off someone's record because it doesn't count. It's not a real, it's not a good fighter. Not a good fighter. It's a terrible fighter. So you could just erase it off his record. Tracy Reeder, Darren Whitney, Ben Lugo. He's not fighting good fighters at all. Just look through his record. And if you look at Landon Quinones, you look at his losses. He lost to Nazareth Hakparast. Nazar Haqparast is a very experienced UFC fighter, solid UFC fighter at that, who's been in the company for a while, and he took him 3 rounds and gave him trouble. Chopped the leg down, landed some good strikes. Nazar ended up getting the win, but it was a competitive fight. He had a good account of himself. And then the fight before that was on the Ultimate Fighter against Jason Knight. I know he got submitted in under a minute. I know it's not the best look there, but in all credit to in this fight, in all fairness to him, Medeiros has no submission wins on his record, so I don't see Quinones being submitted by Medeiros. And Quinones actually does have, he did show better takedown defense in the hack press fight anyway. So I think his takedown defense will be good enough to keep this on the feet. I think on the feet, Quinones has, he fought 3 hard rounds with Haqparast, so I think he can give Markel Medeiros a damn good fight for being an underdog, and I'm picking him to win. Third fight of the night is Julia Stoliarenko versus Goana Carolina. Man, do I really want to pick 3 straight underdogs to start the night? I know this could go really, really sour and downhill quickly, but I'm picking another one. I'm picking Juana Carolina, third dog of the night to start the card, because Julia Stoliarenko is sub or bust, and not even just sub or bust. She's pretty much armbar or bust. She has 11 wins in her career, 10 are by way of submission. Look at all of her wins. She has not won a fight in the UFC by anything but an armbar in round one. She has a round one armbar, or I think she loses this fight. Molly McCann, 2-minute armbar. She lost to Chelsea Chandler, which is aging horribly. She beat Jessica Rose Clark, who isn't even in the UFC and isn't a good fighter at all. She lost to Alexis Davis. She lost to Julia Avila. She lost to Yana Santos. I don't even know how she got in the UFC. She won a split. And then you look through her record, she just loses to any decent fighter she's ever fought. Molly McCann, like I'll give her that. That's a solid win to have, on your record. But that's like the only good win she has on their entire record is Molly McCann. And it's really just because McCann, she caught her in an armbar, which is the only thing she does. And somehow McCann couldn't stop the grappling threat there, which just goes to show how bad her grappling is, I guess. But in this one, Carolina, I know she got knee barred by Lipsky. I get it. She got knee barred by Lipsky, so her grappling sucks, but is what the narrative is. But I think she's smart enough to not get submitted in 2 minutes with an armbar, because if she doesn't get submitted in 2 minutes with an armbar, she's going to win the fight. So I'm going to pick Alana Carolina to get it done. Shouldn't have even spent this much time breaking down this fight. Terrible fight. Blake Bilder, Jung Young Lee, a little bit better of a fight, but not really that much. Blake Bilder is, I don't think, going to win this fight. I think Jung Young Lee is going to win. I think Young Lee is the much more, he's definitely a more powerful striker. I think we can pretty much all agree on that aspect. No matter who you're picking, I think everyone can agree that Jung Young Lee is the more dynamic striker as far as more fast twitch. If he hits you clean, he's probably going to hurt you more than Bilder is. I don't think Bilder has, a ton of power. I think physically he's just kind of limited in comparison to Jung Young Lee. I think Young Lee is a better athlete. I think he's better on the feet. Bilder is the better grappler. I'll give him that. Young Lee has gotten taken down a few times. I could see Bilder, implementing success with that. But at the end of the day, do I think Bilder is going to go out there and just wrestle heavy? Do I think that's going to be his game plan for 3 straight rounds? I just don't see that happening. He's 33 years old. He's more of a finished product than the 28-year-old Lee. Now, I do know Lee got, taken down over and over by Yiza, but in all fairness, like Yiza, he just kept shooting over and over and over again. He was just like heavy wrestling. And Jung Young Lee was landing in between the wrestle, like getting taken down and getting back up. He was landing some good strikes when they were on the feet and doing some decent, like that's how he won the fight. It was a split, but he won just based off doing more damage and landing the strikes, which count more than just getting a takedown. So even if Bilder does get some takedowns and Lee can get back up, I think Lee will do more damage. And then you also have to take into account the fact that Lee does have some submission wins on his record. Now, Bilder can grapple, but if you look at Lee, he does have a few submissions. A first round armbar on the road to the UFC, not against a really high level opponent, but it just goes to show like he is aware on the mat. Like he knows he might not be a really good grappler, but he kind of knows what he's doing somewhat. Um, Plus, I could see this playing out completely on the feet, and I think in that case, I'll definitely pick Jung Young Lee to get it done. The Kyle Nelson fight was less than inspiring, in my opinion, as well. If you really want to look into Blake Boder's past fight, Shane Young, one of the worst fighters on the roster. Then he lost to Nelson, as I just mentioned. Alex Morgan, a guy who he submitted by rear naked choke, but I mean, he just swung right around to his back. Morgan, the thing with Morgan that I saw in that fight also was Morgan is not the same guy as Jung Young Lee as far as the power, the striking, the speed. When you look at Jung Young Lee, you're like, wow, like you're impressed by his striking. You're like, maybe it's not the most technical, maybe he leaves himself open a little bit, but you're like, this dude can crack. Like he can swing hard, swing fast, and really hurt people. With this guy, with Alex Morgan, that Blake Builder beat, he was just slow, kind of like plodding. It didn't he didn't look like a good, like a very dynamic striker as Lee does. So I don't think that win was as great. Regivaldo Carvalho dropped him in their fight. Just a lot of things are red flags for me on the Builder side. Plus him being the older fighter, I'll take the younger guy, Jung Young Lee, to win. Next fight on the card, we have Themba Garimbo versus Pete Rodriguez. I'm going with Themba Garimbo to beat Pete Rodriguez. Now, the reason I'm going with Themba, it's really just a massive experience edge, and I can't trust Pete Rodriguez. He's 5-1, right? He's 5-1. All of his fights have been first round, have ended in the first like 2.5 minutes. You have to go back to his amateur days, and even his amateur fights were all round one. You have to go way back until you find a fight that went the distance, and he lost that fight. So pretty much all of his fights are ending in round one or very early in round two. All of his pro fights, if we look at like what really matters, which is the pro fights, all round one finishes. Either he wins or his only loss was to JDM, but he's fought a few guys that aren't really on his level. And so against Themba Garimbo, I think he's going to struggle because he hasn't been past round one his entire career. Mike Jackson's a terrible fighter. We don't even need to really mention him. Even for regional standards, he's bad. He's just an awful fighter. Jack Della Maddalena, very, very, very good fighter. I believe he has a very good chance of beating Gilbert Burns in their upcoming fight. I think Jack Della's got very, very superb boxing that he will utilize to crack away at Gilbert Burns. Maybe Burns gets a grappling going. I'll make a breakdown for that one in a few months whenever they fight. I don't know. Are they fighting on 290? I think it's 299 they're fighting on. So I'll make a breakdown for that card in a few months. But no shame in losing to Della. But you look at his previous fights, he's fighting nobodies. Roberto Pixley, 5-1, 2-3. He's fighting a bunch of scrubs. So he fought a bunch of scrubs. Themba Garimbo, on the other hand, he's not fighting amazing competition, but he at least is fighting guys that are solid. Takashi Sato, not the best fighter, but still has had UFC experience. Lost to AJ Fletcher. Did have some early wrestling success, but got caught in the guillotine. Um, Julio Rodriguez beat him. I know as an older guy. Henderson Ferreira, 16-3. He's fought some decent guys on the regional scene. Themba did, and once he got to the UFC, he's had a somewhat light schedule, so to speak. AJ Fletcher and Sato are definitely not are definitely more softballs than they are like giving them the toughest matchups. And same thing with Pete Rodriguez though. Pete Rodriguez is a lightweight. He's a lightweight that doesn't want to cut the weight, too lazy to cut the weight. And I say that because like look at the dude. He's 5'9". He's not a welterweight. Themba Garimbo is a much bigger guy than Pete Rodriguez. I do see why Themba is a massive favorite. I think the only way Pete wins is by round one knockout, because if this gets extended, we don't know how his cardio is going to look. His cardio could be terrible. His cardio could be, after the first round, if Themba takes him down a few times, he could be completely gassed out and just give up because, the onslaught from Themba. We know Themba's training at MMA Masters. At the very least, we know that his cardio is going to be very good. He's been the distance before. He has a grapple heavy game plan. Pete has not fought a grappler before or someone that's going to pressure him and try to force the wrestling like Themba is. And Themba's the bigger guy. He's the bigger guy, the stronger guy. He actually looks, say what you want about his skill. I don't think Themba is a very good striker, but I think he comes in good shape. He comes in, you could tell he's training hard. We all know the story with The Rock. The Rock bought him a house. Um, and the dude's been, he really is kind of at that point now where, it's go hard or go home for Themba. You know what I mean? No pun intended with the house thing, but no, like for Themba though, it really is. It's like this is his time. Like if he wants to like make a run, I don't think personally, if I'm being honest, I don't think he's going to make a run like into the top 15 or anything. I don't think he's on that level, but I do think he's on the level to beat a guy like Pete Rodriguez, who is a guy who really should be on the regional scene. I think he hasn't fought anyone besides JDM who finished him in 2 minutes. The rest of the fights he's had are against nobodies, and I think Thumba Garimbo, at least, we've seen him over a few rounds, and we know he'll keep the wrestling pace going. I think eventually he'll get Pete Rodriguez down. Even on the feet, Pete Rodriguez is very hittable. Good striker, very powerful guy, but he can get hit himself, and if he does get cracked, he starts to wither a little bit. So I'm going with Themba Garimbo. Next fight is Charles Johnson versus Azat Maxim. Um, I'm going with Azat Maxim, not just because of the record, though. It's not just because he's 17-0. It isn't, because I don't think Azat Maxim, I think he's a fraud, to be honest, but I do think Charles Johnson's pretty bad. So I think the fraud beats a guy that's, not really UFC, like that really UFC caliber. But with that being said, Charles Johnson, he does have a shot. I don't think this is a runaway fight for Maxim. I think this is relatively competitive. Maxim made it very competitive against Tyson Nam, who was 40. So if he has such a competitive fight against a 40-year-old, it does make me wonder. He is fighting Charles Johnson. Charles Johnson has fought some pretty good UFC fighters in his own right. But then when I look at Johnson, I'm like, I just can't trust the guy. I cannot trust the guy at all. The Esteban fight was a terrible look. Just awful, awful, awful. He had him so tired. Esteban was gassed out. He could barely he was done for. And all Johnson had to do was pour on the pressure. He had the cardio. All he had to do was pour on the pressure, and he would have gotten the win, and he didn't do it. I don't know why he refused to do it, but he just didn't do it. Lost 29-28 because he had an opportunity, and he didn't take it. Against Cody Durden, Durden just out-grappled him 30-27. The O'Day Osborne fight left a lot to be desired. The Jimmy Flick fight, a guy that retired, came back. A lot of people thought, the Zalgas fight. Now, I will say a lot of people thought he did win the Osborne fight, but a lot of people thought he lost the Zalgas fight in return. And then Muhammad Makayev, no shame there in getting, well, he got dominated by Makayev, so maybe there is a little bit of shame, but Makayev is a very good fighter, so I can't hold that really against him too much, because it's not like he got submitted or anything. He did go the distance, just lost to Makayev clearly in that one. I don't know. I just think a guy like Charles Johnson, he finds ways to lose. He finds ways to lose all the time. Even when he has an opportunity to win, he doesn't take it. So his fight IQ is bad. Um, he's not overall, like Johnson does have some skill, but like I said, fight IQ is very important, and he doesn't have any. Maxim 17-0 for a reason. And I do think he is a solid fighter. Like I said, a bit of a fraud in terms of I don't think he's going to break into the top 15. And if he does break into the top 15, someone will expose him. He isn't the prospect that a Tatsuro Taira is. He's not Taira. He's not Makayev. Who else? I think Joshua Van would beat him. However, even though he is a fraud, in my opinion, I do think he is somewhat good in terms of beating Charles Johnson. So let me clear up that in case you guys didn't know what I mean. I think he is good enough to beat Charles Johnson. So I'm going to go Azat Maxim there. Next up is Molly McCann versus Diana Belbita. I'm going with that. No, I'm not going. I'm going with Molly McCann. I was going to say I'm going with Diana. No, I'm going with Molly McCann. I'm not, the line is not justified whatsoever. Minus 265 for McCann. This is her, she's down at strawweight now. She was fighting at 125. Now she's down to 115. She made the weight. She's giving this all she's got. She's a little bit older, about to be 34, but Dana Belbita is just bad. She's just a bad fighter. It doesn't. I have to look past the age because I just look at the skill, and really, when I say skill, there is no skill for Diana Belbita. You could say McCann has no grappling, but like look at the Annabelle. If you think McCann has no grappling, just look at the Annabelle Beta and you'll realize who really doesn't have any grappling. Loses to Carolina Kovacevic. How old was she? 37 in that fight. Yep, about to be 38. Lost to her. Beat Maria Oliveira, who's a terrible fighter. Lost to Gloria DePaula, embarrassing. Beat Hannah Goldie, terrible fighter. Lost to Lena Jojua by armbar. And then she also, this is a rematch because she did lose to Molly McCann. The UFC is setting up Molly McCann to win a fight, which is why they're giving her one of the worst fighters, Diana Belbita. I think Molly McCann wins. I don't think. I think if McCann, like in her losses, she's been dominated in the grappling. Erin Blanchfield, that was the easiest call ever. I knew Erin Blanchfield was going to dominate her. Erin Blanchfield is a future champion, in my opinion. But the Julia Stoliarenko fight, I had no idea that was going to happen. But I do think McCann, Dan Bobita is not the. She has no grappling threat in comparison to Stoliarenko. At least Stoliarenko has that round one armbar. Diana Bobita doesn't even have that. So Molly McCann's going to win, better striker, even honestly, probably better grappler too. So better everywhere, made the weight. She should win. If McCann loses, she's done. She's going to retire. But I think she can win this one. They're giving her a setup fight. Next, this is the first fight on the main card. We have Gilbert Urbina versus Charles Radke. I'm going with Gilbert Urbina. I'm going with Gilbert Urbina because Charles Radke has fought bad competition. Another guy like this whole card has been guys who have fought bad competition, man. And when I look at these Apex fights, these fight nights in the Apex, where they're just trying to throw together a bunch of like random guys on the back half of the roster. They save the guys on the front half of the roster for pay per views and all the top dogs, and then um, I don't know how Charles Radke's on a main card. I think they're trying to promote Gilbert Urbina because, like, I mean, I don't really think after. I don't think they're trying to promote Radke. Gilbert Urbina is the younger guy, the better fighter, in my opinion, and he's only lost to guys like Sean Brady and Brian Battle, and he did lose to Trayshawn Gore as well on the Ultimate Fighter, but that was at 185. The Battle fight was also 185. He's down at 170 now, and Radke was a former 155er. If that goes to show you anything, as you can see, a clear size advantage for Urbina. I think Urbina's, as I mentioned, a much better striker than Radke. Losing to Brian Battle, where is it? Yeah, losing to Brian Battle there. No shame. Brian Battle is a solid fighter. Sean Brady, even less shame with Sean Brady. Sean Brady is very good. Um, as far as his grappling goes and his wrestling, he is like he'll just hold you down and control you. He'll dominate you for 3 rounds. Look at the Kelvin Gastelum fight; that was a very impressive performance from Brady. So I don't think Charles Radke is going to be able to do that. Radke couldn't even get down Blood Diamond. If you can't get down Blood Diamond, why are you like? How is this guy black belt too? How can you not take down Blood Diamond? Blood Diamond's a 3-2 kickboxer, and Charles Radke couldn't take him down. How bad of wrestling do you have to not be able to take down Blood Diamond or not be able to really out wrestle him, out grapple him completely? I don't understand how he couldn't do that. Raheem Forrest beat him. Caleb Crump, like you just looked through his record and he's fought a lot of just the Jonathan Piersma fight, who's a regional guy in Cage Fury. Piersma was out grappling him for a lot of moments in that fight. I just don't think Charles Radke is on that level. Now he does train with good guys. He does train with Bilal. He does train, he has some decent training partners for sure. But just because he's training with those guys doesn't mean, in my opinion, that he's going to beat a guy like Gilbert Urbina. So give me Gilbert Urbina to win. Next fight on the main card is Alishkab Khizriev versus Mahmoud Muradov. If you guys want it, I'm going to give it to Mahmoud Muradov. I think is going to beat Khizriev, the Dagestan fighter. Yes, the undefeated Dagestan fighter. I'm picking against him. And you're probably asking why. Why are you picking against an undefeated Russian? It's because he's fat. And not only because he's fat, it's because he hasn't fought anyone good. Dennis Tululin was his only UFC fight, and that was nearly 2 years ago, right? Nearly 2 years ago, he fought Dennis Tululin. and that was his last fight 2 years ago against Dennis Lewin. And then before that was just a bunch of regional fights and Fight Nights Global. He didn't fight a lot of good level of competition. Now I know he was finishing a lot of those guys in round one, um, and he was looking good. He was looking dominant. But if you look at his rehab, like, let's be honest here, you know, has he really been like his strength competition has not been on the level of Makhmud Muradov. Muradov 2 fights ago he fought Kyle Barallo. Kyle Barallo is an incredible grappler, much more high level than Hizriev, much better grappler. And Muradov, he didn't get submitted by Barallo. In fact, he actually had some good grappling moments against Barallo. He had multiple minutes of control time against Barallo. So I don't think Kyle Barallo is a fraud at all. I think Barallo is a very good grappler. I think Barallo is excellent on the mat. And the fact that Muradov had some good exchanges, took him down, took Barallo down a few times, had a few minutes of control time against him, it just goes to show like he doesn't have bad wrestling and grappling. I know he got submitted by GM3. That's not a good look. He does slow down a little bit. But his rev's untested, man. He's untested. He's another one of these guys. I know he's 14-0, but he hasn't fought anybody good. And this is Makhmud Muradov is pretty good. So if he beats Muradov, I'll give him a little bit of credit. Not a little bit. I'll give him plenty of credit because Muradov is a solid fighter. I'll give his rev credit if he can beat Muradov. But Muradov's the bigger guy. He's in better shape. 6'2" to 5'9". Size advantage for Muradov. I think Muradov, like I said, I think there's a strength advantage for him. The cardio is the only worry because Muradov he does often get tired, but we haven't seen his rev in a while, so maybe he's on EPO. I wouldn't be surprised. He's training out of ATT, so he probably is on EPO, and he's probably going to come out here and just dominate Muradov just by out wrestling him hard for 3 rounds and not getting tired because of all the roids or the EPO, whatever he's on. But I do think Muradov is the side for me here. Next fight is Viviane Araujo versus Natalia Silva. I'm going with Natalia Silva to beat Viviane Araujo. I think most people can kind of see this one, how this one's probably going to play out. Araujo's tough. I could see her hanging in there. I could see her not getting finished by Silva. But Natalia Silva is very good. You look at her last few fights, beat Andrea Lee, beat Victoria Leonardo, beat Jasmine Jasudavicius. I do think this will go the distance. Just looking at this, Natalia Silva is the much better striker, though. It will play out on the feet, I believe, and it will be a one-sided affair, just with the much younger fighter, Natalia Silva, dominating the much older fighter, Viviane Araujo, and taking her spot in the top 10, kind of kicking out the gatekeeper, Viviane, of the division. And if you look at Viviane, she's lost to a lot of girls as well that are, decent girls. But Amanda Ribas, it's not the best loss, honestly, at this point. Alexa Grasso, champ, so no shame. And Caitlin Chukagian, who I don't think is amazing at all, but Chukagian's was also a gatekeeper that she could not get past. I do think Silva wins this fight. I think she makes it look fairly easy. She's only 27 years old. So as I said, 10 years younger, much older Araujo, going to be slowing down. She did win her last fight, but that was against another old fighter, Jennifer Maia. So I do think Natalia Silva is a lot better fighter overall, especially a striker, overall kickboxer than Jennifer Maia was. So give me Natalia Silva to win. Featured fight of the night, we have Randy Rude Boy Brown versus the King of Kung Fu, Muslim Salikov. I'm going with Randy Brown here, and it's mainly because Muslim Salikov is, frankly, he's just old. He's too old for me at this point. He's slowing down. I think it's pretty clear that he's slowing down. Now, you could say, oh, well, Nicholas Dalby just beat Bonfim, so Nicholas Dalby's just a good fighter. Yeah, Dalby is an underrated fighter. I'll give him that. I actually picked Dalby to beat Muslim Salikov as well as an underdog. Dalby was, I think, like a plus 150 or something underdog against Muslim Salikov, and I said Dalby's going to win. And I think here it's another case of Randy Brown Much bigger guy. I think he can just outpoint Salikov. Honestly, I know Brown isn't really known for his power. He hasn't really knocked a lot of guys out, but he does have the reach, and I do think Salikov is going to be there to be hit. I do think he's a little bit older. The reflexes are going to be slower. Don't be surprised if we see a rude boy Randy Brown finish. Um, I just think Salikov's on his way out, man. That's the main reason you know, I like Randy Brown a lot in this fight. Randy Brown, and if you look at his overall record, he hasn't really lost to like a lot of. He's lost to only like top level guys. I know the Nico Price fight was a bad loss, but that's really the only bad loss he has is the Nico Price fight, and that was the hammer fist from bottom from Nico Price that put him out. That's very very unlikely. Like that was unlikely to happen. The probability of that happening was very low. So it's just one of those like freak like crazy knockouts, but if you look at the rest of his fights, Bilal Muhammad lost to him. He's going to be challenging for the belt soon. Um, Vicente Luque, top 10 guy. Jack Del Maddalena, top 10 guy, could be fighting for the belt soon if he beats Burns as well. So, the only guys that Randy Brown's really losing to is the top 10, top 15 level guys for the most part. And I just don't think Muslim Salikov, maybe earlier in his career, he was on that level. I just don't think he is anymore. I think Randy Brown will be a step ahead. And I think Muslim Salikov is on his way out. Co-main event, we have Hanatso Moicano, Money Moicano versus Drew Dober. I'm going with Hanato Moicano here. And the reason I like Moicano is because I think people are just thinking this is just a striker grappler matchup, but I really think Moicano is better than people are giving him credit for. I mean, the guy, he put the hands on Brad Riddell. Brad Riddell's a good striker, man. Brad Riddell he's a coach at Tiger Muay Thai. Um, he's a good, is it City Kickbox? I think he's a coach at, might be City, maybe I'm wrong, it might be City Kickboxing. Either City Kickboxing, well, no, Fiziev is the striking coach at Tiger Muay Thai. It might be City Kickboxing where Riddell's the striking coach, but nonetheless, Riddell he's the striking coach at one of those gyms. Um, Very good striker, like that's his base. And Moicano is not known to be a striker, and he put the hands on Fiziev, or not on Fiziev, excuse me, on Riddell. And he was really hurting Riddell with the hands. In the Alexander Hernandez fight under 2 years ago, that was a relatively recent fight as well, and he did the same thing. It was a club and sub, really. Like he put the hands on Alexander Hernandez. He hurt Alexander Hernandez. Hernandez dropped down, and Hanato Moicano submitted him. The RDA fight, he got out grappled, but and then people are saying he's chinny. Like, I mean, losing to Rafael Fiziev, I don't think that makes him chinny. I mean, Rafael Fiziev's a very good striker who can knock out a ton of guys. Lost to the Korean Zombie, lost to Jose Aldo, got submitted by Ortega. Like, he's lost to top level guys. I don't understand why people are acting like, oh, he's chinny, oh, he's not durable. If you're calling him not durable because he got finished by Rafael Fiziev, um, the Korean Zombie, and Jose Aldo, and then get submitted by Ortega, if you're saying that's why he's not durable, it's like, all right, then most guys, well, pretty much no one's durable then, because a lot of guys get finished by those type of fighters. So I just think that's not the right thing to say. I do think Moicano is underrated on the feet, and I think in the grappling he is a better grappler than Drew Dober. I think in the grappling, he will be a step ahead of Dober. I think if he gets Dober's back, he does have a chance a real life chance of submitting Dober. Dober's always he's alive for the knockout. I think that's the best chance that Dober has of winning this fight. I think that's like his main path to victory is obviously that's a lot of his wins do come from knockout, by way of knockout. He does have a few decision wins as well, but for the most part, like Dober's fights in the UFC, he's knocking guys out. That's how he's been winning fights, especially as of recent. Ricky Glenn knocked him out. Bobby Green, Rafael Alves, Terrence McKinney. He's knocked out a lot of guys. But one thing is, he has struggled with grappling. He has struggled with good grapplers in the past. Um, and I do think Moicano, if Moicano does land some good shots, we saw Drew Dober chinned as well. We saw Drew Dober chinned in the fight against Matt Furbola. Is his chin gone? I don't think it's gone, but I think if Hanato Moicano cracks him, I think he might, I don't know if he's going to go out, but I think he gets a little bit hurt by it. I think he could drop him. Even if he doesn't finish him, like Dober got dropped by McKinney. McKinney hits hard, but we've seen Dober he has a good chin, but we've seen him get dropped before. I could see a club and sub for Moicano, but I'm going to call Moicano to get this one done. And lastly, we have the main event of the evening: Roman Dolidze versus Nasruddin Imavov. I've seen both sides of this, and I was kind of going back and forth for a little bit, but then I was like, you know what? I like Nasruddin Imavov here. I like Nasruddin Imavov, and it's because I think he's the more proved. I've said this pretty much a lot of these fights on a lot of the fights on this card. I've said the same thing over and over, but I think it holds true for this as well. I think Imavov has fought. He fought Sean Strickland in the loss, but going 5 rounds with Sean Strickland, a 5 round, it was his first main event. Going 5 rounds with Strickland was incredible. I mean, I know he lost the fight. I know you could say, oh, Strickland took it on short notice, but like he put up a pretty good account of himself, Imavov. You know what I mean? There was a lot of guys that Sean Strickland fought that were, that were way less of a fight than Imavov was, including Adesanya. Adesanya got dominated by Strickland. I know styles make fights and everything. I'm just saying, MMA math, it doesn't work, but I just wanted to point that out, that Imavov went 5 hard rounds with Strickland. In the fight against Chris Curtis, he was soundly beating Chris Curtis. It wasn't it wasn't super competitive on the numbers. He was way ahead before the accidental headbutt. Yeah, Nasruddin Imavov was winning the fight clearly, and he would have beaten Chris Curtis. He would have outpointed Chris Curtis on his way to a win by decision there. And then before that, beat Joaquin Buckley, beat Edmund Shahbazyan, and beat Ian Heinisch to round out his last 5 fights. For Dolidze, on the other hand, fought Marvin Vettori. That fight was not great. I mean, it was a close fight. A lot of people say that, Dolidze could have won. I mean, Dolidze, like, he was throwing some big power shots, which I think will be the case against Imavov. But Vittori's not really as good of a striker. I think Imavov is a better striker than Vettori. I really do. I think he's just better on the feet. The MMA Factory, say what you want about the MMA Factory. You could say, oh, they're grappling, which I'll get into the grappling in a second, but their striking is very good. Cyril Gane, Imavov, like they got very good strikers coming out of there. I think Imavov will be the much better striker here. Now, there is a chance that he gets, caught with a clean shot from Dolidze, but I mean, it's MMA, so we always have to take into account that anyone can knock out anyone at any given moment. So I think Imavov will be aware of that. I think the most trouble Imavov will be in this fight is if his back is up against the cage. I think Imavov does not want his back up against the cage. Dolidze likes to be right up in your grill, throwing, shots like, even if he gets in the clinch and he can throw knees, big knees in the clinch. If he can get you right up against the cage and throw short strikes, if he can get a hold of you and try to drag you down, I feel like he'll try to do that to Imavov. But if Imavov can keep this at range and keep his back off the cage, I think he's clearly the better striker. I think he can outpoint Roman Dolidze and look like a massive, massive favorite. Now, let's talk about the grappling. The one negativity or the one downside I can say to the game of Imavov in this fight is he has to watch out for the grappling threat of Dolidze. Dolidze is a very, very dangerous grappler. All right. We've seen it against Jack Hermanson. Hermanson took him down immediately off his back. He didn't just accept being in full guard and just hold on like a lot of guys do. He was attacking right away, attacking the legs, got him in a calf slicer, and then just started pounding him out from the, when he was on top of him. It was a terrible position for Jack Hermanson and finished him from that position. Before that, beat Phil Hawes. It was another one where Phil Hawes got his knee torn apart by Dolidze. He was already hurt. The fight should have been stopped, and then he knocked him out on top of that. But that was mainly because Hawes' knee was torn apart. Kyle Dawkins, that was the fight where he had Dawkins up against the cage and landed the knees in the clinch and the punches on top of that. So all in all, all in all, what I see in this fight is Roman Dolidze's chances of winning is if he gets Nasruddin Imavov against the cage, if he can push him up against the cage, if he can land some, if he can get him in the clinch and land some good knees, or short shots in the clinch and try to knock him out up against the cage, I think he'll try to have success there. And I think if Imavov takes Roman down, that'll be a big mistake. I think if Dolidze, if this fight ends up on the mat, Dolidze will have a massive advantage. With that being said, Nasruddin Imavov has very good wrestling, I believe, counter wrestling. I don't think Dolidze will be able to just take Imavov down at will. I think it'll be very difficult to do. And I think if Dolidze does try to wrestle with Imavov, he'll get himself tired, and Imavov will start to pick him apart even more. So I do think this fight will be contested on the feet. I think Imavov will be the one that determines if he wants to take down Dolidze. I think he should, if he's smart, he'll determine that won't be a good idea. I think his path to victory is staying on the outside, picking apart Roman Dolidze, and just waiting and waiting and waiting, not doing anything stupid, just waiting for Dolidze to throw his big, powerful shots. Get out of the way, move out of the way. If his back's up against a cage, move, circle out, circle back to the middle of the cage. And if he does that, I think he's got a clear path to victory here. I like Nasruddin Imavov in the main event. And there it is. There is the full card predictions for UFC Fight Night, Dolidze versus Imavov. A few bold predictions, I'll be honest. A few ones that I know a lot of people are going to disagree with, like this fight right here. But at the end of the day, sometimes when I look at fighters and they don't fight any good competition, I just have to take the guy that's fought the better competition. And if I lose, I lose. If I win, I win. That's just how it is. So anyways, thank you guys very much for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one.